I've personally pitched over 500 landlords in Airbnb face-to-face and turned that into more than 50 properties, making over $150,000 a month. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to pitch landlords and get them to say yes. I'm going to simplify things and give you the beginner's guide I wish I had when I first started my Airbnb business 5 years ago. Along the way, I'll show you the mindset you need to get into, plus the exact frameworks that I use to pitch landlords both on the phone and in person. Before you dial a single number, you need one thing sorted out in your head, and that's confidence. Not the fake type of confidence, but the confidence that makes you feel like that you've been doing this over and over again. And the best example to be like, imagine you close 50 deals already. You need to have that confidence, like as if you're going into your 51st deal and trying to close that property. The easiest way to build confidence is going through reps, right? Speaking to more landlords, creating more conversations, and trying to build new partnerships. That is the best way to build confidence, and it's going to take time. Maybe in your first 5 to 10 tours or even pitches over the phone, you may not have the ultra confidence that's needed to get majority deals across the line, but that is normal. So the more objections that are thrown at you, the more objections that you're able to overcome, the better that you're going to get over the phone. And when these objections do get thrown at you, the quicker that you can answer them shows how confident and certain that you are in the business model. And the landlords and whoever you're calling are going to feed into that type of confidence. When they know exactly what you do in your business, how to overcome certain scenarios, how to handle objections and answer their questions super quick, that is what's going to give you that confidence perception when you're pitching these people over the phone and in person. Alongside of most people, when a lot of people look into Airbnb or want to get started in it, they think of parties, right? Vacation style homes, bachelorette parties, tourism, stuff like that. And that's the same exact thing that I thought when I first got into Airbnb. When you have that mindset shift of this is a corporate housing company, not an Airbnb company, that is going to give you the best first step to start building that confidence. Because no, we aren't an Airbnb company and we don't serve people coming to party in the properties. We serve corporate professionals, and that makes us a corporate housing company. So a lot of my students that I teach building this framework of the confidence, we start with the first step of no, we're not an Airbnb company, we're a corporate housing company. And alongside that process, the more objections that you can go through and handle and the more people you speak to, you are naturally going to build that type of confidence that's going to make you feel like you are closing your 51st deal. You are not asking the landlord for a favor. Instead, you're helping them solve their problem. And that is the exact framework that you need to be using moving forward. Before you say anything about what your business does, you need one answer. That answer is going to decide if this property is even worth pursuing. So the first thing that you need to do when you are pitching these landlords and calling your leads is you need to find out one answer, and that's if they allow corporate leases or if they're at least open to it. So what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and start calling these landlords, and that is going to be your opening message. I want to make it very well aware that the best way to close these deals with the highest success closing rate is going to be first asking the question if they allow corporate leases over the phone, and then immediately segueing into scheduling an in-person tour where you're then going to pitch them the business model. Okay, so I'll break that down here in a second specifically, but this is where so many people go wrong. The last thing you want to be doing is building a ton of lead lists, putting a ton of properties in there with leads that are basically dead, because if they don't allow corporate leases or aren't open to doing it, it's just going to hold you back and it's just going to be a waste of time. So we want to get this first question out of the way, and that's the first question you're going to ask over the phone. So the first variation that we're going to talk about is going to be pitching in person. But before that, like I mentioned, we have to go ahead and call them over the phone and see if they allow corporate leases. So what it's going to look like is you're going to open up asking if the property is still available, right? We got to make sure it's not rented out. And then what we're going to do is you're going to be like, okay, great. We are actually a corporate housing company. We are looking to pick up a couple more units in the area. We think your property look great for what we're looking for. Are you guys interested in taking on a corporate lease or open to it? And that is going to be the question that's going to solidify if this deal is going to be continued to move forward. Now, don't forget, guys, like I said, pitching these people in person, you are going to have a way higher success rate. But in the beginning, we do need to get on the phone and ask them if they allow corporate leases. Once they do say yes, we are then going to segue into scheduling an in-person tour. And that's when you are then going to tour the property, make sure it is, of course, rent ready. It is a good unit. Everything looks good. And it's similar to the pictures that we're looking on Zillow, Craigslist, Hotpads, whatever the website that you found the property on. And we're just going to go ahead and explain the business model to them in person. We're not here to hard close them. We're not here to sell them. But when you're in person, it's just that personalized touch that you're able to relate with them a little bit more. You're able to build a little bit more of a personalized connection. And that's why when you're in person touring these deals, you're going to have a higher success rate on closing them. Now, on the other side of things, if they say they are not open to corporate leases or they do not allow corporate leases, the lead is dead. Just take it off your lead list and move on. And that is going to save you a ton of time. Now, let's say on the other side of things, if you do not or cannot go in person to pitch and you are just going to pitch people over the phone, it's totally fine. I've closed deals over the phone. I have students that close deals over the phone all the time. Just understand that it is going to take you longer. And this is a numbers game. So if it takes you 15 tours to close your first deal in person, it may take you 50 or 100 phone calls to close your first deal over the phone. Keep in mind, it may take a little bit longer, that's normal. But if you absolutely cannot go in person to tour, you can go ahead and pitch over the phone and the same thing follows. So you're going to ask if they allow corporate leases or if they're open to it. And then you're just going to immediately segue into telling them what you do, your corporate housing company, and exactly going to explain the business model over the phone rather than in person. Asking about corporate leases first is going to save you 20 minutes. You know right away if the landlord is worth pitching before you explain a single thing about the business. If you want the full word for word scripts that I use in every objection and every pitch, I put them all together in the description below. Go grab them, they're completely free. Say the landlord says yes, you now have a choice to make, and both options can work if you know when to use each one. Let's say you do pitch the entire process over the phone and they tell you yes. I still think, and this is again the best results, is to go finalize that deal in person, right? Go there, go tour the property, go meet the landlord or the property manager face to face and go talk to them, explain the business model again, similar conversation that you had over the phone. That is going to be the best way to build the closest and best relationships in this business model. So even if you do close these deals over the phone, which again is very possible, I see a lot of people do it, you still want to try and push to going in person just to finalize it. Now, if you don't pitch over the phone, you just ask about the corporate lease question and then you go tour in person, they say yes in person, finalize that deal in person. Okay, obviously it's kind of like a 2-call close already. You spoke to them over the phone and now you're going to close it in person. So if they say yes to you on the tour, I would just go ahead and finalize that deal in person while you're there. Another side note that I've done before, I've actually hopped on Zoom calls with landlords and their wives or their husbands just to build a relationship over the phone. Like if I can't get out there in person, or let's say maybe they're not even in the same state as the same property, I've done that before. So I've hopped on Zoom calls, whether I speak to the property manager that the landlord has in place and I somehow try to get in contact with the actual landlord and pitch them over the phone. That is a really good option as well. But I have used that opportunity of getting on a Zoom call because like it's different than a phone call. You can turn the camera on, you can build rapport a little bit better face to face. And even though it's not in person, it still is a little bit better than just through the phone line. Once you're finalizing these deals, there's typically 2 outcomes. One of them is going to be an application process where they're just going to want to make you fill out an application, right? Like a normal tenant, just to make sure you're not a criminal, you have a clean background. They're going to do a simple background check on you. Sometimes that can take days, sometimes weeks. It depends if it's an apartment complex or a landlord, depends on what their process looks like. And some landlords and some apartment complexes might not even have an application. So sometimes they will turn into a 2 or even 3-call close through this application process. We do just need to kind of muscle our way through that as we kind of go to finalizing this deal. So whatever you need to do to get that across the line, whether it's immediately getting the application filled out, or if there's no application, just immediately sign the lease, getting that in fruition and having them sign the lease addendum. It doesn't matter which one you pick, phone or in person, 1 call or 2 calls, you still walk away with the lease. My next tip is that if you're traveling to a new market, do not just book 1 tour, book multiple, because that trip will barely pay for itself. So book as many tours as you can in a single day instead of just 1 or 2. So bottom line, when you are going to tour these new markets and you're going to take a trip, whether it's for a weekend or let's say 4 days, you want to go ahead and maximize the traveling time that you're going to be in these markets and speak to as many people as possible. So me, for example, when I went to my first market, Pennsylvania, and my second market, Raleigh was a bit further away from me when I was living in New Jersey. So I had to take a plane ride. So when I would go for a long weekend from Friday all the way till about Monday evening. And I would meet close to 8 to 9 landlords a day because some would fall through, some deals just wouldn't work out like while we're there. And you just know how some things can happen, like appointments can get canceled or you may miss stuff. So you always just want to plan ahead and you want to maximize your time in these markets and try and put yourself in front of as many people, because you have to understand this is a numbers game. Even when you are pitching in person, the more reps you have, the more faces you speak to, the better that you're going to get and get closer to landing a deal. So when you're going to these markets, what I like to do, just a simple rule of thumb, is just stack up the entire calendar every hour with appointments, whether it's apartment complexes or landlords. And that's going to give you the best odds to maximize your entire day in these markets to speak to as many people as possible. Another tip that I want to give you guys, when you are on that first call and you immediately segue into actually scheduling the tour before you actually travel to the market, you want to just give them 2 options. So what I do is like, hey, I would love to come in person and tour the property and really see if this is going to be a good fit for us. I have availability at 1 p.m. or 3 p.m. EST. What works best for you? Give them 2 options is the best way to see what's going to work for them. And then you can go ahead and solidify that and put that on your calendar. And I do that with all of the tours that I schedule. So I look at my calendar, the times that I have for each day while I'm there, and I go ahead and give them options, 2 options to be specific, to see what's going to work best for them. Boom, I fly there or I drive there and I have a whole day, a calendar stacked of appointments, because I know the more landlords that I speak to, the more chances are closer to a yes I'm going to get. Give 2 options every single time. And by doing this, landlords will stop putting you off and give you an honest answer. That's how your calendar gets full instead of you waiting around for a callback that will never come. Now that you're standing in the unit now with the landlord, this is where you get to explain what your business does. So the first thing that I like to do is when I'm touring these properties is I like to get to know who is it that I'm actually speaking to and get getting the tour from. That's going to give me this idea on how to judge my pitch, what to say, what not to say. So let's dive into it. So when you're touring, the first thing we're going to say is we're a corporate housing company, right? We're looking to pick up a couple extra units in the area. It's basically the exact same sentence that we're saying over the phone to actually schedule the tour. And we don't want to immediately pretend that we're bigger than we actually are. And this is where a lot of people go wrong, right? They come out of the gate and they say, yeah, we already have 10 properties or we already have 20 properties in the area. And if it's not true, don't say that, because they may ask you, oh, do you have any references? Do you have any relationships we could reach out to that can vouch for you, right? And we don't really want to dig that hole for ourselves. So if you're a startup, simply say you're a startup. Like, it's totally fine. Everyone starts somewhere. You look at Amazon, a multi-billion-dollar company, they started as a startup. So there's no harm, there's no foul there. You want to be straight up and just say, hey, we're a startup. This is exactly what we're doing. This area is great because there's a lot of corporate professionals traveling here. We got X hospital, we got X university, right? It's bringing a lot of demand for the people that we've been serving. That's going to give you a really good starting point to build a relationship. Now, as you're walking around the property, right, making sure it's actually rent ready and turnkey is then when you want to start actually explaining the business model a little bit more specifically. And this is exactly how the conversation is going to go. Now, before I dive into that, just remember you are not selling them on anything. You are just explaining the business model, what we do, exactly what we're going to do with their property. So this is what you're going to say specifically. And keep in mind, you could always use your own filler words, right? I just curated this on how I talk, right? So if you want to mix and match a couple things, that's totally fine. You don't have to say this exactly word for word. Okay. But the best thing is, again, we're just going to repeat similar to what we first spoke about on the phone before we scheduled the tour. And that's, hey, we're a corporate housing company. We're looking to pick up an extra few units in the area. This property looks exactly what we're looking for. What we do is we actually serve corporate professionals. What we do a little bit different than most corporate housing companies is instead of finding the client first and then the property, we actually find the property first, furnish it with a long-term traveler in mind, like travel nurses, doctors, corporate professionals, and then we go ahead and serve those professionals in the properties that we furnish and design specifically for them. And then I just go into, yeah, we're seeing a large influx of corporate professionals coming here. So we're really looking to scale in this exact market, in this exact area. This is exactly why we're here. And this is why we want to go ahead and see if you would be a great partner to work with us. And then you can also explain exactly why we serve these type of people. So for example, you can mention, yeah, we serve a lot of travel nurses because a lot of these nurses get assigned 2 weeks or even month-long contracts with the hospitals nearby. But sometimes those contracts get extended, sometimes they get shortened. So instead of them going to book a hotel, right, and having to renew every single day or every single week, they can go ahead and book our properties and we can shorten or lengthen their stays at any given time. So it's a lot easier for them. Again, also comparing that to signing a month lease or even a year-long lease when their contract isn't that long. So that's why we serve this specific demographic, because we're able to basically fill in those gaps and accommodate the exact stays that they need in the area that they're coming for. Lastly, as you're still touring and you're still walking through, you want to go ahead and give them a little bit of an idea on how long these people are going to be staying for. So you can also throw in there when you say, yeah, we furnish the property with a long-term traveler in mind. These corporate professionals usually stay for anywhere from a couple of days to a couple of months at a time. And I just like to throw that in there because it at least gives that framework in the beginning and sets the expectation that like this is going to be a short-term, mid-term, and potentially a long-term rental as well, because we can serve people that's going to stay for 1 day. We can also serve them for a year. So I just like to throw that in there and set that expectation from the start. When you say it this way, the landlord's going to stop wondering what you're actually doing with their property. They know exactly what you do, and that's what's going to get you closer to a yes. A lot of landlords are going to ask if this is basically an Airbnb. That question alone can lose you the deal if you answer their question wrong. This is going to be single-hand one of the most common objections that you're going to get, whether it's over the phone or in person. They're going to ask you if you are an Airbnb company. That's exactly why we always say no. I immediately, right when they say, oh, are you an Airbnb company, or is this going to be an Airbnb? I immediately say no. Now, yes, we're obviously using the property and putting it up on Airbnb, and I'll explain that in a second, but we are not an Airbnb quote unquote company. Airbnb is just the marketing platform that we use. So I immediately say no, and then I segue into what we do and why we're not considered an Airbnb company. And that relates exactly back to, we're a corporate housing company, right? So what we do is we take these properties, again, we furnish them with a long-term traveler in mind. We attract corporate professionals. And yes, we do use multiple different marketing streams to market the property out, but our main traction is coming from insurance groups. We're partnered with hospitals, right? We constantly are calling them every single week, telling them that we have properties in the area. And then also we do have a lot of insurance groups that reach out to us for families that are being displaced from a house fire or a house flood, or their house is being renovated. A lot of our clients will come from marketing areas like that, but we do use Airbnb to market the property. Okay. We do not use Airbnb to fully market the property though. It's just an angle that we use, and we just get it up on there because that's what a lot of people are using, specifically traveling nurses, to book their stays. And keep in mind, I will be frank with you guys. You could tell them face to face. I say this all the time, is a lot of corporate professionals, like their employers, are using that to book for their employee stays, right? So hospitals, that are assigning travel nurses. Like their employers will go on Airbnb and book those stays for their employees, right? So everyone just has this misconception of, oh, Airbnb is for partiers, it's for vacationers. And that's not the case. And this is one of the biggest objections that we do have to hurdle. And it's okay. I've closed tons of deals when they immediately come out and say, oh, no, I'm not doing Airbnb, or I don't want to work with an Airbnb company. It's just an objection that we have to get over. We have to explain this stuff to them. And it's totally fine. If they're not open to it, it's going to happen. We just move on. But the best way of doing that is just explaining, hey, people have this different perspective in Airbnb of only having parties or tourism, bachelorette parties, when that's not the case. We really have to explain Airbnb as a marketing platform. That's what we use it for. But the way that we actually serve and attract these corporate professionals is through our pricing. So we incentivize discounts for longer months, longer stays, which is going to attract those people. And if someone is wanting to stay for 1-2 nights or even a weekend, it's going to be a very, very high rate. And that's how we kind of shy away from serving any sort of travelers for vacation, tourism, stuff like that, and mainly attract those corporate professionals. Every objection that's thrown at you is just something that we need to handle and get over that hurdle. And that's what's going to get you closer to closing the deal. Remember this, none of this works if it only benefits you. The only time landlords will agree to your offer is when it solves a problem they already have. So let's talk a little bit more on why landlords or apartment complexes say yes to begin with. We have to outline their goals and where they're trying to take their portfolio. And majority of the time, I'd say 99.9% of the time, these landlords, these apartment complex owners are looking to continue to buy more properties, right? Continue generating wealth, preserving their wealth. And that's exactly what they need to do. And in order to do that, they need to have all their properties occupied by really good tenants that are paying rent every single month on time, have very low occupancy so they can actually pay the mortgage, and continue scaling to buy more properties, pull out more loans, and continue generating more wealth. So we always want to begin with solving their problems, and that's by having less tenant turnover, right? For example, if a landlord has 20 properties in their portfolio, well, every year or two, usually they're going to have about a 50% tenant turnover. That means a lot of their tenants might not renew their leases, and that's up to the property manager or the landlord to go out there, find a new tenant, screen them, make sure that they're a good tenant that's going to take care of the property and actually pay rent on time. Well, when someone like us comes into the picture and we become their long-term tenant, well, they don't have to worry about tenant turnover, because if the property is profitable, which we know it is before we even sign the lease, we're going to want to continue renewing the lease year after year after year. And us, we're of course going to pay rent every single month because we know we're going to crush it. It resolves the issue of them having tenant turnover, and that's a massive problem for them. So when you outline that to them and you create that picture, it allows them to have a clear picture of saying, oh wow, this is going to be really beneficial for me, because now instead of finding 5 or 10 different tenants, I just have to deal with you, one person. I just have to make sure you are paying me rent and taking care of my properties rather than so many different people. So it actually is going to be a better process for them, and it's going to be a problem solver to begin with. Another thing that I want to add in here is most landlords are working B2C, right? Business to consumer. And anyone that knows that, right, knows that a lot of issues can come up, right? Especially in real estate, right? You have a lot of squatters that sign long-term leases. They don't pay rent. There's just so many issues that go on. That is not in the short-term rental space. It's literally illegal to squat, especially if you have an Airbnb, you could just call the cops and have them escorted. So that's not a problem that we have to worry. But once you move into the picture, well, now they're actually working B2B, right? Business to business. So business being the landlord and business being us. So it's just a lot easier. It's more of a partnership rather than B2C, and it just makes it a whole lot easier. Now, the reason why I'm bringing all of this stuff up, well, one, because this is like one of the biggest things that people are always like, why would landlords say yes to this? But also, just because landlords say no to you to begin with, that doesn't mean that they're fully out of the picture. That just means that you have to do your job, your due diligence to create this picture and show them what problems that you're going to solve for them. You're no longer asking for a favor anymore. Instead, you're helping them. And that is what gets a landlord to listen and say yes instead of brushing you off. Now, understand this. You are not going to get a yes on every call. That is normal, and it's not a reason to quit. The most important thing that I tell everyone is this is a numbers game. You have to speak to a lot of people, and the more people that you speak to, the closer that you're going to get a yes. And through the process of you speaking to more people, making more repetitions, right, having more conversations, that's just going to build confidence and certainty behind your words, and it's just going to make your pitch better. So ultimately, this is a numbers game. So if you speak to 50 landlords and you don't close a deal, don't feel discouraged. Call another 50. Meet another 50 people in person, because I promise once you land that first deal, 100 of other doors open up, because landlords have multiple properties, apartment complexes have multiple vacant apartments that they give to you once you prove yourself. And just bottom line, this is a numbers game. I've seen people close their first deal in the first 20 calls. I've also seen other people have to speak to 200 plus people before they close their first deal. So this is the hardest part in getting this business going. But once you get that first yes, that door is going to open up hundreds of other doors. And I promise each pitch, each relationship that you try to build, your pitch is just going to have way more confidence behind behind it, and that's going to get you closer to a yes. So I'm speaking to you, if you've spoken or called 200, 300, even 500 landlords and haven't got a yes, that is okay. This is a numbers game. And once you get your first yes, I promise it gets easier. You just have to get over this little hump. Everything I just gave you is the starting point, the frame, the questions, the pitch. But once you're out there pitching landlords yourself, you're going to run into situations that this video may have not even covered. So check out this next video where I break down my top 26 lessons from over 1,000 landlord pitches, including the mistakes that cost me deals early on.